I stood in the grand ballroom, clutching the necklace that once belonged to my late wife, the final token of her enduring love, which I intended to present to my daughter Olivia as a cherished wedding gift. My brother-in-law, Nathan, flashed a contemptuous grin and sneered, "What is this worthless trash?" The guests fell silent, and a sharp pang of betrayal gripped my heart. He had no idea that I was about to surprise them with a luxurious condominium in the heart of Chicago. But his cruel remark ignited a shadowy resolve within me. I vowed that retribution would be swift and devastating. Before we proceed, please subscribe to the channel and share in the comments where you're tuning in from. The ballroom sparkled like a chandelier ensnared in a tempest of illumination. Crystal pendants dangled from above, scattering shattered rainbows across the polished stone floor. I positioned myself at the head table, my fingertips grazing the satin-lined case in my pocket. Its heft anchored me, a lifeline to her, my beloved departed wife Eleanor, whose affection still shimmered in the gems I was set to bestow upon our daughter Olivia. The space hummed with conversation, the tinkling of crystal glasses, as Chicago's elite mingled in bespoke attire and flowing silk. I cleared my throat, and the murmur subsided, every gaze fixed upon me. "Tonight," I announced, my tone firm despite the tightness in my throat, "we honor Olivia and Nathan, my daughter, my greatest joy." I turned to Olivia, glowing in her ivory gown, her stare drifting beyond me. "This belongs to you, my dear." I unveiled the case, exposing the necklace, a torrent of gems that seized the light like distant constellations. "It was your mother's, her devotion, now in your keeping." A unified gasp of admiration swept the room. I advanced toward Olivia, the jewels swaying gently from my grasp. Then Nathan, my newly acquired son-in-law, leaned in, his mouth twisting into a derisive smirk. "What is this? Adrian, some bargain basement bauble from a flea market." His words sliced through the quiet, biting and scornful. A ripple of uneasy chuckles escaped a handful of attendees. Swiftly quelled, my hand halted in midair, the gems quivered. I glanced at Olivia, expecting her to rise in defense of the heirloom, to stand by me. She fixated on the tablecloth, her fingers knotting the fabric of her serviette. Silence enveloped us. My ribcage constricted, as though the atmosphere had solidified into shards. Nathan flicked a careless hand, dislodging the satin case from my hold. It struck the surface with a muffled thump, the necklace tumbling free, its facets gleaming like scattered droplets on the linen. "Really," Adrian Nathan drawled, his volume carrying across the hall. "You might have at least invested in something fresh." Further stifled mirth echoed. My features flushed, not with humiliation, but with a fury long dormant. I had orchestrated the revelation of the condominium, a lavish unit on Chicago's Gold Coast, as their matrimonial present. Yet Nathan's taunt, his haughty glare, stirred an icy and methodical force inside me. I composed myself, summoning a composed grin. "Savor the festivities," I uttered, my inflection serene, concealing all. I pivoted, disregarding the sympathetic stares, the murmurs shadowing my retreat. The stone tiles resounded beneath my strides as I traversed the ballroom, each footfall more burdensome than the prior. I thrust open the ornate doors, the brisk evening breeze striking my visage like a rebuke. In the vehicle, I seized the wheel. The metropolis streaked by, vivid neon, blaring horns, an indifferent expanse. The necklace transcended mere adornment. It embodied Eleanor's essence, the sole fragment of her I could impart. Olivia's reticence wounded deeper than Nathan's malice. How profoundly had I erred in my judgment of them? The inquiry gnawed at me, acute and unyielding, as Chicago's glow receded in the distance. The vintage residence in Evanston groaned beneath the burden of its recollections. I settled into a faded leather recliner, the sort Eleanor once nestled in with a novel. A solitary lantern diffused a gentle radiance, mellowing the room's contours. The atmosphere carried hints of antique timber and lingering espresso, unchanged over 12 years. In my palms rested a snapshot, Eleanor and Olivia, mirthful amid the blooms, their tresses woven with daylight. I outlined the worn border, my digit pausing on Olivia's beam. That evening's ballroom scene still seared my thoughts. Nathan's jeer, Olivia's evasive glance. They had etched an injury I could not dismiss. I placed the image aside and unfurled the scrapbook on the side table. Each leaf wove a thread into the fabric of my devotions. Olivia at 5. Her small palm in mine as we strolled to lessons. Her mother's void a specter between us. I toiled through extended evenings on the trading floor, bartering rest for transactions to finance her elite academy, her mentors, her aspirations. I recalled her at 8, etching a missive for Father's Day, her tongue protruding in focus. "You're my champion. Father," she had inscribed, the script irregular yet fervent. I discovered that note in a compartment, the parchment wrinkled. The lettering dimmed, and sorrow clenched my core. Where had that child vanished to? At 18, she rang from university, her timbre vibrant, soliciting aid for fees. I dispatched the funds without inquiry, liquidating portions of my holdings to fulfill it. She vowed to return soon. Yet the dialogues shortened, her pretexts keener. Then arrived Nathan. I advanced to a picture of Olivia at 26, her limb entwined with his at a fundraiser. Her expression had altered, refined, remote. She ceased answering my summons, her messages curt and aloof, overwhelmed by Nathan. She would claim, as though I were a mere footnote. I convinced myself it was transient, that she would reconnect. But in the ballroom, as she permitted Nathan to deride her mother's necklace, clarity struck. I had forfeited her. I rose, traversing the chamber, the planks protesting underfoot. The dwelling seemed constricted, its barriers encroaching with inescapable reminiscences. I halted at the pane, gazing into the shadowed avenue. I had bestowed upon Olivia my every resource, my hours, my spirit, my prospects, and for what reward to endure public degradation, my affection discarded like refuse. I returned the note to its nook, securing it with a faint snap. The history had evaporated, and tenacious grip would merely erode my strength. I encountered my likeness in the facing glass, silvered locks, weary orbs, yet a novel glint emerged. Determination. They presumed they could shatter me, but they erred gravely. I would not permit them to dismantle my achievements, my acquisitions. Neither Nathan nor even Olivia. I aligned my posture, my mandible firm. The hour for counteraction had dawned. The suite on the trading floor thrummed with subdued authority. Transparent barriers overlooked Chicago's silhouette, acute and implacable, mirroring the verdict crystallizing in my psyche. I occupied my workstation, a bastion of lacquered elm, encircled by displays pulsing with figures. The ambiance evoked fresh brew and fresh print, evoking pacts I had sealed, the dominion I had erected. Yet this day, my intent strayed from gain. It centered on equity. Nathan's timbre reverberated in my skull, his derisive pitch, his rejection of Eleanor's necklace. Olivia's muteness inflicted a severer laceration than utterances. I had devoted eras to pardoning her detachment, rationalizing her selections. Enough. I extracted a drawer and retrieved a portrait from her commencement ceremony, her grin expansive, unshielded. I contemplated it briefly, then resealed it away. Emotion would impede me henceforth. I lifted the receiver and contacted a longtime ally, Marcus, a figure versed in this metropolis's fiscal undercurrents. Marcus, I stated upon his response. I require details on Nathan Reed, his transactions, his allies, his frailties. Marcus emitted a knowing laugh. "Allow me 3 days. Adrian, are you certain?" I hesitated, my clasp intensifying on the device. "I have never been surer." Disconnecting. I addressed a pile of dossiers on my surface. Nathan's moniker surfaced in several. His recent pursuits, hazardous wagers on fluctuating sectors. His drive was his asset, yet also his vulnerability. I seized a stylus, highlighting designations of his pivotal backers, individuals I had encountered across decades, individuals indebted to my benevolence. My heartbeat evened, a tranquility descending upon me. This realm was mine, and Nathan was poised to comprehend the peril of opposing me. I initiated a ledger, scripting an outline. Initially, I would chart his web, every pact, every accord. Subsequently, I would unearth the fissures, the fulcrums of influence, a delayed remittance there, a murmured skepticism elsewhere. I had forged my vocation on exactitude, and this endeavor would crown my oeuvre. My stylus accelerated, the fluid bolding the sheet. I permitted a modest curve of the lips. Nathan believed himself impervious. He would rue that hubris shortly. Rising, I approached the vista, the urban sprawl unfurling beneath. Chicago's tumult seemed remote, inconsequential. For the inaugural instance in days, command was mine. I assembled a dossier, parchments, designations, a schema of Nathan's sphere, and secured it beneath my limb. Departing the suite, the bulk of the binder signified a covenant. Nathan would atone, and Olivia would witness the toll of her determinations. I entered the lift, my silhouette keen in the lustrous panels. This marked merely the inception. The bistro on Chicago's near north side was a snug refuge of scarred crockery and fogged casements. I claimed a secluded alcove, the hide seat sighing as I settled, the aroma of scorched brew blending with the moist draft from the thoroughfare. Opposite, a sleuth named Derek positioned a battered satchel on the surface, his digits, tinged with tobacco, unfastened it with a snap. "You sought grime on Reed," he rasped, his timbre subdued. Gravelly, "Here it lies." I perused the bundle he proffered. Sheets of fiscal logs, correspondences, and hazy images cascaded forth, each annotated in crimson, indictments of dubious pacts, undisclosed deficits, and intimations of deceit. Nathan's zeal had propelled him into perilous endeavors, stakes liable to crumble at a single misstep. My scrutiny dwelled on an image. Nathan clasping palms with a figure I identified, a venture capital predator renowned for severing bonds at the slightest peril. "He's overstretched," Derek noted. "Wrapping the leaf. One nudge, and he's finished." I inclined my head, my circulation hastening. This constituted the linchpin I had pursued, yet as I examined the records, a phrase ensnared my attention. A dispatch wherein Nathan brushed aside Olivia's qualms regarding their ledger. "Fret not, dearest," he had penned. "Your father's coffers will eternally rescue us." My gut recoiled. Olivia, my offspring, demeaned to a piece in his scheme. I sealed the bundle, my phalanges clenched about its borders. Nathan's presumption would precipitate his demise, but Olivia's involvement lacerated more acutely than anticipated. Later that midday, I lingered beyond their Gold Coast condominium, the attendant saluting as I proceeded. The ascender purred, conveying me to their eyrie. Within, the ether thickened with the fragrance of orchids and lacquer, the sort of austere opulence that proclaimed affluence yet voided coziness. Ornate reflectors bordered the barriers, mirroring the frigid stone expanse. Olivia welcomed me with an odd simper, her phalanges toying with a cuff. Nathan reclined on a plush divan, a tumbler of scotch in fist. "Adrian," he intoned, his inflection oozing feigned cordiality. Ever a delight. I had arrived under the pretext of kinship, yet my scrutiny was acute, inventorying each particular: Nathan's offhand pomposity, his limbs draped over the divan, his scornful chortle upon my allusion to the nuptials, validated the dossier's veracity. Olivia was more subdued, her regard flitting betwixt us. "How fares your vocation?" "Father," she inquired. Her pitch frail, I grinned, sustaining levity, as ever, occupied, but my focus snared on a partially ajar compartment adjacent to her. Within, I discerned the satin case from the ceremony. The necklace, Eleanor's necklace, cast off like obsolete curios. My thorax contracted, yet I maintained composure. Nathan prattled of a fresh compact, his phrases laced with bluster. "You wouldn't grasp it. Adrian, traditional commerce is obsolete." I nodded, permitting his discourse, each syllable a spade excavating his sepulchre. Olivia withdrew to the galley, and I trailed, proposing assistance. As she tinkered with the percolator, I observed the rigidity in her frame, the quiver in her grasp. "All well," I ventured gently. She assented excessively, evading my scrutiny. "Fine, father," merely swamped, returning to the salon. Nathan's communicator vibrated. He eyed it, his mandible clenching, and I recognized Derek's compilation was nascent. I departed promptly thereafter, the binder's mass substantial in my attaché. In the conveyance, I withdrew a lone folio, a roster of Nathan's patrons, monikers I could influence via summons. The metropolis blurred, its beacons keen against the twilight. Nathan had erected his realm on unstable terrain, and I stood prepared to quake its base. My suite on the trading floor constituted a citadel of crystal and alloy, its hush interrupted solely by the faint drone of my apparatus. The panorama gleamed past the pane, a memento of the wagers I had pursued across eras. This eve, it served as my arena. I accessed the secured dispatch template, the indicator pulsing akin to a throb. The adjunct archive was a stiletto, Derek's compilation, purged of origin, delineating Nathan's pecuniary stumbles. One depression, and it would alight in the receptacles of his institution's directors. My digit lingered above the cursor. This instant defined irrevocability. I pondered Olivia, her anxious simper in the airy, the necklace concealed in that compartment. She would endure the repercussion, and the notion prodded me. But she had elected Nathan, his milieu over mine. I could no longer shield her from her folly. I depressed the key. The noise incisive in the stillness, the dispatch evaporated into the void. A noiseless projectile targeted at Nathan's profession. I reclined, my circulation even, and peculiar serenity enshrouding me. Across the locale in Nathan's streamlined bureau, the ramifications commenced unfurling. I gleaned from Marcus that the directors had convened urgently. Nathan perched at his station, folios strewn like wilted foliage, his cravat slackened. His superior, a hoary colossus named Victor Lang, flung a reproduced iteration of the compilation onto the surface. "Clarify this. Read," he commanded. Nathan's complexion crimsoned, his pitch escalating. "It's fabrication. Someone's ensnaring me." But Victor's orbs chilled, his credence undermined. Nathan's allure, his customary armament, wavered beneath the burden of those crimson-inked leaves. In their eyrie, Olivia strode restlessly, her communicator to her oracle. I could envision her timbre edged with apprehension as she addressed Nathan. "You assured stability," she retorted, her phrases resounding through the stone-enclosed salon. Nathan's retort clipped, evasive. "It remains stable, Olivia. Simply abstain. She severed the link, her palms quaking, the circlet on her digit ensnaring the gleam. She remained ignorant of the dispatch's provenance from me, though I speculated if she harbored suspicions. The notion smarted, yet I suppressed it. Back in my suite, I updated a periodical outlet. A caption shimmered. Reed Enterprises confronts scrutiny. It was modest, interred in the commerce segment, yet sufficient. The initial fracture in Nathan's veneer. I shut my device with a gentle click, the resonance conclusive, akin to a portal bolting. My likeness confronted me from the obscured display, aged, tempered, yet vibrant with intent. I had inflicted the premier incision, and it gratified profoundly, excessively, perhaps. My communicator hummed, a script from Marcus, directors probing further, Nathan's on precarious footing. I indulged a faint grin, the urban drone below synchronized with my scheme's cadence. Yet as I collected my effects to exit, a query persisted. To what extent would I advance this pursuit? I quelled it, concentrating on the subsequent phase. Nathan and Olivia remained oblivious to the impending, and I aimed to preserve that ignorance. The eatery on Chicago's Lakeview district enveloped in subdued luminescence and chiming stemware, its ether laden with the bouquet of fungi and vintage. I occupied the opposing seat from Nathan and Olivia, the alabaster cloth immaculate betwixt us, a tenuous shield against the friction crackling ambiently. Nathan's utensil drummed steadily against his dish, his orbs constricted as he appraised me. Olivia rotated her matrimonial band, her scrutiny darting to adjacent patrons as though pursuing egress. This kinship repast, designed to mend fissures, was not of the sort. Nathan inclined forth, his timbre subdued yet pointed. You've been remarkably taciturn, Adrian, not tampering in affairs beyond your purview. I trust. His phrases a prod infused with distrust. I imbibed from my vessel, permitting the cubes to chime against the crystal. My countenance a veneer of poise. I'm merely present for the meal. Nathan, I replied uniformly, but my cognition surged, enumerating his each gesture, the perspiration pearling his brow, the manner his simper evaded his orbs. Olivia interjected, her pitch taut. Father. Nathan's merely strained. Duties have intensified. She glanced his way, soliciting ratification, but Nathan dismissed her with a gesture. Cease advocating for me. Love. Your sire comprehends the contest's nature. He redirected to me, his inflection rigidifying. Or perchance he does not. Veteran hounds, novel maneuvers. A scattering of proximate feasters peered over, detecting the acerbity in his timbre. My clasp firmed on my serviette, yet I upheld my grin. You're beneath duress, I observed. My utterances measured. It manifests. Nathan's utensil suspended midway, his orbs igniting. What implies that he retorted? Olivia extended toward his limb, murmuring, Nathan, cease. But he repelled her, inclining nearer. If you possess an utterance, Adrian, voice it. Or are you merely agitating as per usual? I sustained his scrutiny, my timbre unwavering. Tread warily. Nathan, imputations may recoil. The eatery appeared to hush, the din of cutlery waning as our station evolved into its own fray. Olivia's visage blanched, her phalanges stationary on her band. Father, abstain, she uttered faintly. Yet her phrases lacked resolve. She championed him still, and it lacerated beyond admission. But it also propelled me. They fancied they could coerce my quietude. They deluded themselves. I positioned my serviette upon the cloth. The action purposeful, terminal. I believe we've concluded, I declared, ascending. Nathan derided, yet his orbs betrayed a glimmer of disquiet. Olivia commenced articulation, then desisted, her labia quivering. I exited, the eatery's balminess yielding to the chill nocturnal zephyr. The metropolis throbbed, encircling me, its beacons keen and inexorable, aligning with the lucidity in my intellect. Nathan's imputations signified his agitation. Excellent. But Olivia's allegiance to him reopened a lesion unanticipated. I paused curbside, glancing rearward at the eatery's radiant casements. They lingered at the station, their crowns inclined conjointly, disputing or plotting. It signified naught. I had initiated this, and I would consummate it. The ensuing maneuver would strike fiercer, in size profounder. I pivoted and strode into the obscurity, the heft of my determination denser than ever. They had propelled me excessively afar, and now they would assimilate the expenditure. The assembly chamber on the trading floor gleamed with authority's luster. Walnut expanse buffed to reflective sheen, barriers from base to apex encasing Chicago's serrated panorama. I stationed at the forefront, my palms steady as I unveiled a slender binder. Opposite reclined three of Nathan's essential patrons, their countenances blending doubt and discomfort. The ether vibrated with the subtle chime of a mural chronometer, each instant a cue of the perils. Gentlemen, I commenced, my timbre composed yet resolute. Let us deliberate Nathan Reed's recent enterprise. I propelled a synopsis across the expanse, its leaves inscribed with inconsistencies, inflated yields, veiled shortfalls, pacts hovering on ruin, the patrons inclined, orbs constricting. Reed's computations falter, I noted, indicating a diagram. He's wagering on pilfered chronology, and your capital's imperiled. 1. A platinum-tressed elder named Preston Ellis knit his brow. He's perpetually audacious, he remarked. Yet his pitch fluctuated. I proffered a slender simper. Audacity suffices not when the bedrock erodes, the chamber stilled. The gravity of my phrases alighting like sediment. I omitted Nathan's appellation anew, permitting the numerals to articulate. By the juncture, I resealed the binder. Two had consented to retract. Preston demurred, then assented. We'll reassess our stance, he stated, but I discerned my triumph. As they departed, a chill gratification welled within. Nathan's dominion unraveled, and I extracted the filaments. Later that post-meridian, I occupied a certifier's alcove, a confined domain saturated with the bouquet of fluid and archaic vellum. The certifier, a lean female with piercing orbs, propelled a parchment toward me. This conveys the Gold Coast condominium to a philanthropic entity. She articulated, the yields shall sustain a haven for women, per your directive. I inclined, my stylus poised above the endorsement line, the condominium destined as Olivia and Nathan's nuptial boon, an emblem of my devotion. Now it would impart their precept. I endorsed with one intentional flourish, the implement's rasp resounding in the quietude. Olivia's visage flickered in my cognition, her uneasy simper, her concealment of Eleanor's necklace. Could I truly inflict this upon her? The interrogation lingered, yet I banished it. She had selected Nathan's sphere, his principles, this embodied equity, not malice. The certifier imprinted the parchment, and I sensed a burden elevate, supplanted by adamantine intent. Returning to my suite, I perused my inbox. A dispatch from Preston affirmed. They had disengaged from Nathan's compact. I reclined, the urban cadence a faint throb beyond the crystal. The schema functioned, yet it fell short. Nathan's descent demanded totality, and Olivia required vision of her selection's levy. I stowed the certified parchment in a compartment, its margins crisp against my phalanges. As I entered the ascender, the portals sealing with a muted thud. I reflected, they've forfeited beyond comprehension, and they're on the cusp of sensing it. Nathan's bureau devolved into a melee of dispersed folios and wavering monitors. The formerly pristine station submerged beneath synopses, vessels of brew, and a partially depleted flask of analgesics. The ether reeked of exertion and despair, the variety that adheres to one beholding his cosmos disintegrate. He slumped over his portable, the luminescence etching his crimson-veined orbs. A dispatch from his superior blazed on the display. Your role concludes. Instantaneous effect. Patrons have retreated. Nathan's palm quivered as he battered the portable shut. He grasped his communicator, summoning Preston. What transpires? He bellowed, his timbre fracturing. You cannot merely withdraw. Preston's retort succinct, irrevocable. The computations veritate not. Read. We're severed. Nathan flung the communicator across the chamber. It collided with the barrier with a fracture, the facade fracturing. His thorax surged, his cravat askew as he paced the bureau like a confined beast. Someone orchestrates this, he grumbled. Someone manipulates me. Across the locale in their Gold Coast eyrie, Olivia stationed in the galley, the clamor of crockery veiling her mounting alarm. She had overheard Nathan's summons, his timbre resounding through the eyrie. When he surged inward, his countenance a veneer of ire. She immobilized. They've severed me, he ejected, flinging his overgarment onto the ledge. Eras of labor vanished. Olivia's palms quaked as she deposited a vessel. You avowed the compact's solidity, she articulated, her timbre edged. You pledged security. Nathan whirled upon her, his orbs aflame. Refrain from commencing. Olivia, I'm managing it. But his phrases echoed hollow, and she retreated, her circlet ensnaring the gleam. Managing it, she retorted. We're submerging. Nathan, what have you wrought? He averted, muttering of adversaries, intrigues. Olivia's viscera twisted. For the premier occasion, she perceived him not as her guardian, but as an encumbrance. I occupied my Evanston abode, the antique recliner sighing beneath me, a slate equilibrated on my patella. A periodical notification gleamed. Reed Enterprises crumbles amid patron flight. I perused it doubly, relishing the phrases. Nathan's dominion lay in rubble, precisely as schemed. My phalanges grazed the margin of a snapshot on the expanse. Olivia as an infant, gleeful in my embrace. The conquest stung keenly, yet it wounded reciprocally. She endured anguish, and a fragment of me yearned for her. Yet she had decreed her selection. I deactivated the slate, the display eclipsing. Nathan's plunge was grandiose, but it heralded merely the prelude. Olivia adhered to him still, sightless to verity. The subsequent phase would proximate nearer, compel her to discern her forfeiture. I ascended, the dwelling serene encircling me, its accustomed groans a solace. The metropolis lingered without, its beacons summoning. I possessed one terminal maneuver, and it would transmute all. The dawn was overcast, Chicago's panorama subdued behind a shroud of vapors. I stationed in my suite, the receiver to my oracle as I consummated the conveyance. Ensure the epistle attains Olivia Reed by midday. I instructed the messenger outlet, my timbre unwavering. It's imperative. The certified parchment, encased in a robust sheath with a sealant, constituted my ultimate boon to her. Not the condominium she anticipated, but a precept in ramifications. The yields from its alienation now financed a refuge in Eleanor's honor. Olivia merited awareness. I severed the link, my phalanges outlining my workstation's edge. The verdict to alienate the condominium had been frigid, computed. Yet it bore a smart, Olivia's countenance at the nuptials, her muteness as Nathan derided the necklace, resurfaced in my cognition. She had elected him, yet she remained my progeny. Could I absolve her? The interrogation persisted unresolved as I observed the metropolis throb below. In their eyrie, Olivia responded to the portal, her tresses bound, orbs fatigued. The messenger tendered the sheath, its mass startling her. She rent it asunder, the sealant disintegrating beneath her phalanges. The enclosed epistle formal, austere, the condominium, her envisioned domicile, had been alienated. The resources evaporated, bestowed to benevolence. Her respiration faltered, the vellum quivering in her palms. "No," she murmured, subsiding onto a perch. The chamber contracted, the ornate reflectors deriding her. She summoned Nathan, her timbre quaking. "Father alienated the condominium," she articulated, the phrases asphyxiating her. "It's vanished. Nathan, all of it." He stationed across the chamber, ringed by partially laden crates, their possessions erupting like a legion. "Your sire," he derided, hurling a garment into a valise, perpetually manipulating filaments. But his bluster thinned, his palms unsteady. Olivia clutched the epistle, her orbs scorching. "This constitutes your culpability," she articulated, her timbre subdued, vehement. "You propelled him excessively afar." Nathan averted, mute, and Olivia sensed the terrain convulse beneath her. The condominium, their prestige, their tomorrow. It eluded. She fixated on the epistle, her father's endorsement keen against the leaf. She had disregarded his devotion, belittled his immolations, and now she remunerated the levy. The epiphany was a lamina incising profoundly. I occupied my suite, a periodical notification on my communicator. Reed Duo confronts dispossession amid pecuniary devastation. The phrases frigid, terminal, yet they conveyed not the elation anticipated. Olivia's torment was tangible, and it echoed my own. Yet equity exacted equilibrium, and I had tendered it. I ascended, assembling my overgarment. The gravity of my decrees substantial. They'd approach me anon, fractured, imploring. But would I hearken the interrogation suspended ambiently as I entered the ascender, the portals eclipsing akin to a drape on antiquity? The Evanston abode endured serene beneath Eventide's onus, its aged masonry aglow subtly in the waning luminescence. I was in the salon, the antique lantern diffusing a mild aureole over the threadbare mat. When the portal chime resounded, its peal lacerated the quietude, incisive and undesired. I discerned the visitor's air unveiling the portal, Nathan and Olivia stationed on the threshold, their visages emaciated, their garb disheveled as though donned protractedly, the urban drone remote, bequeathing solely their labored respirations to occupy the void. Adrian, Nathan initiated, his timbre denuded of its habitual bravado. "We must converse." Olivia gripped his limb, her orbs inflamed, her countenance streaked with saline. I yielded passage, my mien inscrutable. The ether densified as they shuffled inward, their exigency a perceptible entity. I indicated the settee, but they persisted erect, fidgeting akin to ensnared fauna. "We've forfeited all," Nathan articulated, his palms clenching. "The condominium, my vocation, our reserves, evaporated." He compelled a feeble simper, as though charisma could yet redeem him. You command the resources. Adrian, aid us, I beseech. His phrases a supplication, yet they bore a vestige of presumption, as though I owed him deliverance. I leaned against the recliner, limbs crossed, mute. Olivia advanced, her timbre fracturing. Father, I profoundly regret. She subsided to her patella, her palms quaking. I intended not this. I ought to have championed you, championed Mother's necklace. Please abstain from repelling us. Her wails resounded in the chamber, each a stiletto to my thorax. I beheld the diminutive lass who once adhered to me, but also the matron who had elected Nathan's cosmos over mine. I aligned, my timbre unwavering, frigid. You decreed your paths, the pair of you. Nathan derided what signified utmost. You, Olivia, abided and permitted him. Her crown drooped, her frame shuddering. Nathan parted his labia, but I elevated a palm. No further pretexts. You erected this desolation, inhabit it. The utterance is substantial, terminal, akin to boulders plummeting into a placid lagoon. I redirected towards the portal, my footfalls intentional. Depart, I commanded, unveiling it. The nocturnal zephyr inundated, chill and keen. Nathan's countenance contorted, a fusion of ire and capitulation. But he escorted Olivia outward by the limb. She glanced rearward, her orbs entreating. But I sustained firmness, the portal sealed with a muted thud, the resonance reverberating in my core. I stationed solitary, the lantern's radiance flickering. Without, I advanced onto the veranda, the firmament's luminaries faint above the urban gleam. The gravity of their supplications lingered, but so did the lucidity of my intent. I had raised their cosmos precisely as they essayed to raise mine. Equity dispensed, yet the outlay tangible. As I contemplated the vault, a query stirred. What ensues? The retort eluded clarity, but the obscurity appeared to cradle a covenant, one I unprepared to denominate. The suite on the trading floor bathed in matutinal radiance, the sun cleaving through the crystal barriers to temper the lacquered elm station. I perched with a sheaf of parchments before me, their leaves crisp, their objective lucid, the advocate opposite. A female of pragmatic scrutiny propelled a stylus my direction. This institutes the Eleanor Hayes Endowment, she articulated, her timbre expeditious. Your benefaction shall sustain refuges and endowments across eras. I inclined, the gravity of the juncture alighting upon me akin to a cloak. I endorsed each leaf, the implement's rasp a subdued cadence. The aggregate was considerable, vast sums hewn from my opulence, an opulence I once envisioned bequeathing to Olivia. But this resonated justly, a manner to venerate Eleanor's devotion, her fortitude. The endowment would bear her appellation, a pharos for the necessitous, a heritage untainted by Nathan's avarice or Olivia's perfidy. My palm paused on the terminal endorsement, a scintilla of uncertainty emerging. Was this ample to suture the lesion the advocate collated the parchments, her simper occupational yet cordial? Eleanor would beam with pride, she remarked, and I sensed a constriction in my gullet. I glanced at the snapshot on my station. Eleanor and Olivia, gleeful amid blooms of yore, the casing worn, the pain obscured from eras of contact. I elevated it, my digit caressing Eleanor's countenance. She would, I murmured, the phrases more for myself than the advocate. I ascended, insinuating the snapshot into my recess. The gesture resonated terminal, a covenant to bear her proximate, not as onus, but as luminescence. My communicator hummed, a ratification from the endowment's overseer, expressing gratitude for the conveyance. I skimmed it, my thorax easing. The metropolis scintillated beyond the pain, its tumult softened by the dawn's glow. For the inaugural instance in moons, I sensed emancipated. As I assembled my effects, my phalanges grazed a sheath in my overgarment recess. Olivia's script confronted, the epistle unperused. Tendered days prior, I had abstained from perusal, averse to it. Her penitence, her laments, they could not annul antiquity. Yet the mass tugged at me, a cue of the last she embodied. I exited the suite, the sheath persisting in my recess, my footfalls buoyant yet resolute. The metropolis awaited, and I possessed one terminal locale to attend, one terminal verity to confront. The necropolis constituted a tranquil ocean of monoliths, the ether dense with the bouquet of sodden loam and shed fronds. I stationed before Eleanor's sepulchre, the granite chill beneath my phalanges as I outlined her appellation. The facsimile of her necklace reposed in my palm, its gems ensnaring the ashen luminescence of the clouded firmament. I had commissioned it post-ceremony, a method to retain her intimate sans adherence to the archetype, now forfeited to Olivia's apathy. This juncture dedicated to us, to the devotion we had constructed. Eleanor, I uttered softly, genuflecting. I accomplished it. I safeguarded our legacy, my timbre steadfast. Yet my thorax smarted. Nathan's eradicated, his dominion pulverized. Olivia, she's assimilating. But it suffices not. I paused, the gale agitating the fronds at my petals. You perpetually counseled to elevate, to contend for rectitude. I aspire I rendered you elated. The utterances resonated akin to an orison, a liberation. I positioned the necklace upon the sepulchre, its facets glimmering against the monolith. It signified a valediction, not to Eleanor's reminiscence, but to the torment I had borne, the deed unadorned. Yet it emancipated a profundity within me. I aligned, my scrutiny lingering on the cenotaph. The eras we shared, the glee, the serene eves, remained untouched by these moons' tumult that constituted my conquest. My palm insinuated into my recess, grazing the unperused epistle from Olivia. I extracted it. The vellum creased, her script a spectre of the infant she had been. A moiety of me yearned to peruse it, to hearken her timbre, her laments. But I required not her utterances to discern verity. She had elected her trajectory, and I had elected mine. I resealed the epistle, unperused, a mute repudiation to permit her torment to tether me anew. I pivoted, striding the lane, the crunch of shingle beneath my soles, a steadfast cadence. The necropolis receded rearward, its quietude yielding to the metropolis's remote drone. I sensed lighter, each footfall a divestiture of the ire, the perfidy, the exigency for reprisal. Equity had dispensed, not with malice, but with intent. Eleanor's devotion, her fortitude, endured in the endowment, in me. As I attained the great, I glanced rearward, the necklace a faint scintilla against the monolith. Existence merely inaugurates. I reflected, the phrases unvoiced yet assured, the firmament clarified, a sliver of azure cleaving through. I advanced into the expanse beyond, prepared for whatever ensued, my spirit finally serene. As the echoes of Adrian's journey fade into the quiet night, remember this tale of resolve and redemption. What choices would you make when betrayal cuts deep? Share your deepest impressions in the comments below. Let's exchange thoughts, spark conversations, and connect through these stories. Your questions fuel our dialogue. Ask away, and we'll explore together. Interact with the channel, subscribe for more, and hit that notification bell to hear the next captivating narrative. Simply click the box on the left. Thank you, from the heart, for joining this adventure. Until next time.